This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 6 of the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by Alec Lashley and Kyler Staley, and I'm Drew Rosenberg. Guys, we're already on episode 6. How are you guys doing?
Great. It's a little rainy out, but doing good. Fall's here, best time of the year. Sports getting ready to really ramp up with basketball and football going on. So good to be here.
Fall is definitely back this weekend. It wasn't earlier this week. It changed from 87 to 55 degrees in the span of probably 48 hours. But no, I'm officially back in Indy for good. So no more back and forth. So that is good. House is still a mess, but we'll eventually get things all moved in.
Is this breaking news? Finally, we can break the news that Alec Lashley is back in the state full time.
Yes, back full time. No more traveling to and from. So that is the good news. Bad news is I'm going to have to deal with a lot more of you two. So I don't know if it's all good.
I can finally prove to people that you're real. I always talk about you all the time on the road and everything with recruiting, but I can finally tell people, yeah, he's real. He's right here.
Let's say, Alec, first time I saw you in person, I didn't even believe it was you, It's just kind of never saw, different seeing you in a little Zoom box versus seeing you in person.
That it is. Now you get to see a lot more of me. So I don't know if you're going to be happy, sad, mad, or all of the above there. But yeah, good. It's good to be back.
Yeah, I mean, Howard, seems like you had an interesting day yesterday. I mean, you're an Indiana State guy. You want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, you had an interesting tweet.
We ain't got to go into too much details about that, but yeah, Indiana State's president's retiring. Probably the best news Indiana State's had in a long time, honestly. Just not a good president. Enrollment rates have dropped. She missed out on a lot of opportunities in the athletics department. So that's about all I'll say right now because I'm in the media and don't want to, kind of stir too much of a pot and everything. But yeah, it's a good day to be a Sycamore. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, it's probably a lot better day to be a Sycamore than it is to be an IU football fan. And I think that's where we're going to start off with Maryland. Indiana lost 44-17. Ugly, ugly performance. I mean, we had to watch, and I wanted to turn that game off the entire time. What was some of your takeaways from the beatdown in college? Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I think everyone kind of has the same takeaways there, right? I mean, it was not a game that you really wanted to watch after the first theoretically really the first like two possessions. Indiana was not well prepared, was not ready to go execution wise, obviously on both sides of the ball. I think that was kind of the first time that you really saw Indiana's defense really have a huge significant hole. And right, everyone's going to be talking about the offense, and with all due respect, I mean that's been pretty bad and pretty much spiraling downward for most of the season. But defense definitely showed some holes, some things that you are a little bit worried about going into the next couple of weeks, right? I mean, the secondary has been kind of up and down throughout the season. I think the biggest thing with them that's kind of masked a lot of those big explosive plays have been the takeaways that they've been able to create. But against Maryland, right, the secondary wasn't ready to perform. The defensive line, the pass rush, that front seven really struggled. So it's kind of a battle of two evils there. That nothing was really working on that side of the ball, and obviously offensively, we know kind of what that was, right? I mean, Taven Jackson obviously ended up being benched for Brendan Sorsby, and we'll see what ends up going into the quarterback battle over the next week and a half here. But I think, yes, my opinion only, but I think you need to keep Taven Jackson as the starter moving forward. I think that would send a really poor and bad message to the rest of this. Not only the people inside of the locker room, but I think the fan base as well. If you're going to pull the string that early on, especially to a guy who I think has showed that he can be the guy with the right play calling around him, and we'll obviously hopefully see what that looks like with Rod Carey now that Walt Bell has obviously been relieved of his duties there. But I think good time for a bye week. We'll see what Indiana can do, but I think a lot of questions that still are probably going to go unanswered next week at Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, the post game from Tom Allen was crazy, in my opinion. I mean, the one thing he really has going for him is he has a young quarterback who has a really high ceiling and a ton of potential, and he just ripped Taven Jackson in the post game. And then not just ripping him, and it was talking about how it's execution, but then the next day he fires his offensive coordinator. So there's just so much confusion, in my opinion, around this program, and it's like, what is the problem? Kyler, what were kind of your thoughts on that, the post game from Tom Allen?
I don't know if you want me to answer what is the problem. I think that's a loaded question and everything. But I mean, I'll just say this. The Maryland game went about as what I expected it would be. I even think way before the season even started, when we had our predictions out and everything, I said this was probably going to be the most ugly game of the season for Indiana. And it went, about as what I expected and everything. I didn't expect the offense to get rolling. I expected a lot of struggles. The defense, like Alex said, it's been up and down, especially in the secondary. It was once a really strong unit, and it was the positive side of this Indiana program for the past, 3-4 weeks or whatever. But now it's just kind of back to, what we kind of got familiar with the last 2 weeks. But I had a bold prediction that Walt Bell would have been fired if they had a poor performance, and obviously that came true. That was the biggest news that's come out of the week and everything. But it's a good move, I think, just because Tom Allen needed to try to get everything put back together. He needed to try to bring everybody back together and kind of reset with it. People have questioned a little bit if this was the right time to fire him. People have said, if you were going to fire him, you should have done it before the season or something like that. Hindsight being 2020, you wanted kind of to give Walt Bell a chance, to kind of show he is a good offensive coordinator or whatever. Just didn't show it with that. So I think it's the right move, especially going into a bye week. You get 2 full weeks with Rod Carey coming in, taking over the offensive duties and stuff, and seeing what he can do with the team. Hopefully he can maybe bring a little bit of a spark back. And then on the defensive side, you hope that, those guys can kind of get back to what they were, versus Ohio State in the first few games of the season, especially that second half of the Louisville game that we always talk about. So right move right now, I think, for Indiana, but I don't know if things are going to turn around, drastically and quickly as people may hope.
Yeah, with Rod Carey stepping in for Walt Bell, I mean, let's call it out as we all kind of saw it coming. The writing was on the wall. Walt Bell's time in Indiana was coming to an end, and with the bye week, it's the perfect time to do it. But Rod Carey not being an interim offensive coordinator and being the permanent offensive coordinator was, I think, in my opinion, the biggest takeaway. I was shocked when I saw that. No national search, nothing. It was just he steps in and immediately takes over the full-time position, which was shocking. Alec, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the biggest takeaway from a lot of people, right? I mean, I think going back to last year when he took over for Darren Hiller when he was let go, and took over the offensive line responsibilities there, right? That was more in the interim role. This year, not so much. I think going into these potentially next, right, 15, 16, 17 games of what could be Tom Allen's tenure, going into obviously 2024, before a massive buyout comes back down to reality. There's still some time that he can kind of get the fan base back on his side by obviously winning some games. This one, I don't necessarily agree with, right? I think it would have been a lot easier to kind of put him in this role, see what he can do, right? If he earns the job, he earns the job at the end of the season. But the fact that you kind of give him the keys to the car right now, where he's already come out and said that he's not going to be doing anything significantly different in terms of overall scheme and system, right? Which I think is fair, that there's not enough time to put in a whole new system with just a week and a half to prepare for Michigan and obviously the rest of the season here. But on the opposite side of this, right, I mean, Rod Carey has shown the ability to put together a decent offense, obviously being back in the MAC with Northern Illinois. Not so much during his tenure as a head coach at Temple, but with Northern Illinois, his offenses, those first 4 or 5 seasons that he was there, were in the top 2, if not the top offense in the MAC, putting up significant numbers, not only scoring, but also just moving the ball as well. And that's I think the biggest thing that you can look at is potentially his ability to move the ball with an offense. And look, this offense has some playmakers. We've seen what Jalen Lucas can do. Donovan McCulley started to come on. Guy like Christian Turner has really started to come on strong over the last couple of weeks. They have playmakers on the outside of the ball, or on the outside of the field, and Indiana's just not showcased the ability to actually use any of them. And I think potentially could see that, right? I mean, Rod Carey talked a lot about what he can do to make this offense way less predictable. And I think over Walt Bell's tenure, that was the one downfall for this offense. Is I think everyone, including fans, pretty much knew almost on every play what that call was going to be. So when you look back at his time again in Northern Illinois, really good passing team, also really good running team. And I think if Indiana is able to showcase a little bit of just what that offense was back in Northern Illinois under Rod Carey, specifically running the ball, I think you're going to be able to open up that passing game, open up the playbook a little bit, and see what this offense can do. But I think not making him just the interim and giving him kind of the full responsibility there and elevating him officially, I think was a bit of a head scratcher for me, especially when you look into potentially what a big 2024 season is, not only for Rod Carey specifically, but also Tom Allen next year and what could potentially be that final year in his contract.
I got a question. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Is this move by Tom Allen his last chance to kind of rectify and kind of save his job? Is this the last move?
I go back and forth. I mean, with the buyout, Tom Allen is not good. The athletic department is not going to pay $20 million to fire Tom Allen. I just don't see that happening in any world. So until that buyout drops, Tom Allen's job is most likely safe, unless something really bad happens where they can fire him with cause, which just does not seem like it's going to happen. But this is the type of move that gets the coach fired. I think in the long term, this could be like it's starting to pile up with Tom Allen. And I mean, he's a really good guy. He seems like he's a good guy, but at a certain point, the results got to matter. They just have not been there the last 2.5 years after what was supposed to be the start of a new chapter in Indiana football. And really since then, I just don't know what Tom Allen's done to hold on to his job other than that huge contract he had signed in previously during 2022 season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the bigger thing is, right, you look at what he has done when he has hired coordinators. After Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack left, right, you look at what he's been able to do, or the lack thereof, right? I mean, I think a lot of these hires have been a bit of a head scratcher for Indiana. You just don't. Walt Bell was obviously a head scratcher, and that turned out to be a very negative move. Some of the other the elevation of Nick Sheridan wasn't. Obviously, some injuries in offensive line played into that. Keeping Darren Hiller for an extra 4 or 5 games before he was eventually fired, I think a lot of people were way against that decision as well. So, Tom Allen has not had a great track record when it comes to going out and landing significant hires on his staff for offensive and defensive coordinators. We'll see if this is going to be something that kind of helps him out. And, the only good thing in saving grace, right? I think, especially after the last few weeks, there's not a lot of more bad things that can come from this offense, right? I think you've seen, I would hope, right, the worst of truly what it can be, and that's a very predictable offense, a very predictable scheme, and something that just very, very much lacks the ability of explosive plays. And I don't think you can go any further downhill than kind of what it's been. So again, like Drew said, I don't think you're going to see any move in Tom Allen's contract before the end of 2024. When that does obviously come back down to that buyout. But this is a move that I just don't fully agree with and don't think is what was probably best in terms of making Rod Carey the full time OC without any sort of interim tag there.
Yeah, that was weird. And then the other thing I want to talk about is you mentioned it a little bit. Apparently, the QB competition is open again, which I was shocked when I saw that. I know Taven Jackson has not been excellent, but he's a redshirt freshman. You Let's call it how it is with NIL. Paid him a lot of money to come here and play for Tom Allen and play for this school, and you're kind of giving up on him already potentially if they move away from him. I just don't see how you can go away from Taven Jackson with nothing against Brendan Sorsby. I just don't think the ceiling is higher. The floor might be a little higher, but you got to be willing to take the risk with Taven Jackson for what you did to get him to come to Indiana. I just don't understand how you can go away from him this early in his career, especially as a redshirt freshman. He has pressure constantly in his face. He's not in a good situation. And yes, he hasn't been great, but you can't put all the offensive struggles on him. Kyler, do you have any thoughts on the open competition?
Yeah. Sorry, I was kind of waiting to see who you were going to ask. But anyway, yeah, it's not the right move. Not at all. I didn't think it was the right move, honestly, to have a quarterback competition 2 weeks into the season. There's no reason why you should have one right now with that. And Taven Jackson, I think, is the guy. Alex said it a little earlier. You got to stick with Taven Jackson. You got to prove, hey, we have all the confidence in this guy. This is who we're going to kind of rally around. You're just doing that. I mean, you're going to cause so many chemistry issues with the team, and the team can say anything that they want. The skill players, the playmakers can say whatever they want. You know, it doesn't matter who's behind center. It doesn't matter what that. It does. It really does, because you're throwing away the flow of the game. I understand why they took Taven Jackson out of the game in Maryland. You see that quite a bit in the NFL. You see that quite a bit, when the game's already decided, quarterback's play is not doing well, you always bring in your backup and things like that. You want to protect the starter, or you just want to try to get a spark back and see what you got. Obviously, Sorsby didn't show hardly any spark when he was there in Maryland. I mean, nothing that he could really do, but there shouldn't be a quarterback competition in the middle of the season. You got to ride with Taven. Unless, something happens where Taven can't play or whatever, don't go with Sorsby. I don't even want to throw in Dexter Williams in this conversation, because I think when he does come back, I don't think he's going to be able to be healthy enough and have enough or kick enough of the rust off the tires or something like that for him to be able to, produce on the field. I think Taven's the guy. You got to stick with him. We've always said this is a reason why you got him. He's a talented quarterback. He's got a lot of upside, a lot of potential. You gotta stick with him. You gotta let him make the mistakes in his freshman year so he can learn.
Yeah, and I mean, I said it kind of at the top. Taven Jackson is the quarterback, should be the quarterback. The upside, the potential is there. We've seen that with some of his play throughout the 3 starts since he was officially named the starter. There was way more wrong with the offense than just Taven Jackson, right? And you're gonna have growing pains with the redshirt freshman with an offense, right, that is not schematically and systematically very well presented, which I think everyone can pretty much agree that that's what that offense was. But I'm kind of waiting for Tom Allen to take some of the responsibility post game, right? He's put a lot of this on Taven Jackson. He's put a lot of this on some of the other players, and he's definitely put a lot of it on, obviously, Walt Bell and the play calling. But this decision now to obviously move Rod Carey into that official offensive coordinator role, I mean, everything is going to be falling on Tom Allen's shoulders. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm waiting now with, I think, pretty much everyone expecting a loss to Michigan, unfortunately, but that's just kind of the outlook of obviously what's likely going to happen. If that execution isn't any better and just a little bit crisper than what it has been the past 2 weeks, Tom Allen can't come and say that it's anyone else's fault except for his, because all this execution talk that he's been having over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks has pretty much fallen on deaf ears, right? And it's time for him specifically to take some of that responsibility, because his messaging is just not getting across to the players when clearly the effort is also in question, not just the execution.
Yeah, I think the Indiana fans are tired of hearing, we got to execute better, and we got to get much better. We got to get much better with stuff. I think they're over that, and you said it perfectly. Everything's falling on deaf ears. He really does have to take responsibility. That's what a head coach does. That's what a leader does. And sometimes I feel like that's questioned a lot of times. But, at some point in time, you can't just keep saying we got to execute better, we got to get better, whatever. It's time to just finally be better, in my opinion.
I mean, this is right around the point where they said Dexter Williams could be back after the bye mid-season. So I'll just ask this question: is Taven Jackson starting at quarterback next week, or could it be Sorsby or Dexter Williams? What do you think, Alec?
I mean, again, I'm going to go with Taven Jackson. I don't see. I think it should be Taven Jackson. I'm going to be very disappointed if it's either of the other two. Taven Jackson earned the right to start and have a longer leash than one bad half against Maryland. And let's call it what it is. No matter how bad they looked against Akron, they still won. And at the end of the day, right, it's about wins and losses. And if he's able to lead his team, he had a great showing against Indiana State, had a shaky first half against Louisville, had a great second half against Louisville, and followed that up with still a win against Akron. So one theoretically one bad half should not change that.
Go, you think it's Taven?
It should be Taven. Would it surprise me if they made a quarterback change? Absolutely not, because I just feel like that's, right on par with Indiana football. Just not having any confidence and just, wanting to try new things. If something doesn't work, making really hot decisions really quickly and everything. But it should be Taven Jackson. Will it be? I can't answer that.
Yeah, I think we all agree it should be Taven, but I'm with you. I have no idea. I'd be more surprised if it was Sorsby than Dexter Williams, though. But it has to be Taven. With that, I think we should move to a bit of a more positive note. I'm not going to call it news, but Indiana basketball seems to be trending in the right direction with some couple big recruits. Trilly Donovan had a little tweet of a song featuring Liam Payne and A Boogie with the Hoodie, kind of hinting at maybe Liam McNeely, Boogie Fland coming. Their commitments could be coming soon for Indiana and Mike Woodson. How were you thinking about that? What are you hearing?
I mean, first of all, Trilly Donovan, that's probably one of the best tweets you could ever do. I don't know what he did to find that. I don't know if he's a big hoodie with the boogie with the hoodie, or whatever that guy's name is, or whatever. I think I only know like 2 or 3 of his songs, but just fantastic. But yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with these two guys, but all signs, all roads just seem like it's leading towards a commitment from both of those guys. In this day and age with, how things are recruiting in college basketball, you never really know until, the kid makes an announcement, this is where he's going. You go back to Mackenzie and Baco, it was strongly felt that it was Kansas when Indiana was recruiting him, until he finally said, hey, I'm going to Indiana. It just came out of nowhere and stuff. But I mean, it's really, really positive for the Indiana program to be in these kinds of battles with Kansas and Kentucky and even Alabama, who's recently seen a surge in their program as well. Indiana basketball, Mike Woodson especially, is legit. I think you can finally say that he's in these battles with these top, college programs when it comes to the top players in the nation, doing a fantastic job. But, hopefully in the next week or so, we do find out, where Boogie Fland or where Liam McNeely's going and stuff. But right now it's really positive in the program. It's going to be a heartbreaker if they don't land either one of them. But me personally, I don't think that's the case. But we'll just see. It's very exciting times to be an Indiana basketball fan. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, before I throw it to you, Alec, I want to say one thing about A Boogie with the Hoodie. He was actually just in Bloomington last Thursday. He played at Assembly Hall. So one Boogie was here. Maybe the other Boogie will be here pretty soon. But Alec, what were your thoughts on what you've been hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, right, obviously between Kansas and Indiana for Liam McNeely, at this point, I think Indiana has to feel pretty good about where they're at with Liam McNeely, right? They've put in the work, not only just Brian Walsh, but that entire coaching staff, especially Mike Woodson. And, I think Mike Woodson caught a lot of heat early on in his Indiana tenure here as head coach of not getting as involved as a head coach in some of these recruitments until later on in the process. I think he learned from that. And this one is going to be one that I think you're going to see Indiana really reap the benefits from with Liam McNeely, right? I mean, he's a guy that not only can you build an entire class around, but you are going to basically bring other talented players with you. And one of the best assets that Liam McNeely brings to the floor is his ability to be a playmaker, not only with the ball in his hands, but without the ball. And he's such an unselfish guy. And, there's a reason he went to Montverde Academy, and that was obviously to get better, but to play around other great players. And the biggest thing with him is just that unselfishness. And he doesn't need to rack up a bunch of stats. He can go off for 10 assists one game, 10 rebounds the next, and score 30 at the drop of a dime. And he knows his game. He's very confident in his game, and that's something that a lot of players want to play with. Someone who is going to bring that unselfish ability to the floor. And so when you look at a guy like Boogie Fland, right, that's his final three: Indiana, Alabama, and then Kentucky. But this is pretty much a two, has been for quite some time for the most part, but pretty much a two-team race with Indiana and Kentucky. Indiana has put in way more work than I would say Kentucky has at this point in this recruitment. Mike Woodson and that staff have been out there 3 times in the past month. They've obviously had him on campus as well. They made another visit to him earlier in the fall too. Indiana has put in the amount of work that you need to land a top 20, top 15 player, and specifically a guy like Boogie Fland, another extremely talented guy who can come in and create right away, and be a very valuable piece as a lead guard to a team that's going to make a deep tournament run. And when you look at what Indiana needs in 2024, you need high impact freshmen who can come in and make an immediate impact, not just scoring the ball, but making plays. And that's one thing that Indiana obviously had with Jalen Hood-Schifino. We saw what he was able to do. That development really, really helped with Boogie Fland. Talking with him after his visit earlier this summer, talking with his dad, other people around the recruitment, that was a very significant step for Indiana to make in that recruitment specifically, is the development that they were able to see with Jalen Hood-Schifino, specifically playing on the ball, playing in an NBA system, something that obviously any point guard, any guard wants the ability to do, is obviously get to the NBA. So they crossed off and checked off both of those boxes. I think you're going to see a decision from both of those guys probably within the next few weeks. And I think at this stage, you have to feel pretty confident where you're at with both of those guys specifically. And then obviously you get into a third bubble with Garrett Queen, who's probably still about a month and a half off from making a decision.
Yeah, I mean, you look at when Woodson took the job here in Indiana, a couple things he said. One thing that really stuck out with me was he wants to play modern basketball. He doesn't want to play inside out. He wants to play outside in. He wants guys who can shoot the ball and versatile wings. Liam McNeely is that. And then Boogie Fland is that type of point guard, a guy who can shoot the ball but also play make and lead your offense. And Woodson's, you're kind of starting to see it in his recruitment. He's not really recruiting these traditional, like the old school back to the basket, trying to slow the game down. He wants to play fast, and haven't really seen that just because you have Trey Jackson-Davis, and with the Trey Jackson-Davis, you have to play through him. But now as Woodson starts to get his players where it's a team of just his guys, I think we're going to start to see more of that type of offense. So
yeah,
Woodson.
I just want to say it's an NBA style of offense, and that's very, very attractive to any type of recruit, any type of transfer, or anything like that. So you look at that, and what's great about the guys that Woodson's recruiting is they can come in and they can fill a spot right away and everything like that, and their minute that they're going to play makes sense for them.
And specifically about that, when you can come in and play immediately, right? If you're looking at Boogie Fland specifically, Indiana's going to have ample minutes available in that backcourt. Obviously, you have Gabe Cupp still as a point guard, who's obviously here now as a freshman, who will play significant minutes as a sophomore. But Xavier Johnson's going to be gone, right? There's still the ability that Trey Galloway may move on and not use his COVID year. We don't know what's going to happen with Ja'Kai Newton, obviously health-wise, and how available he's going to be throughout this year, and if he's going to be available next year, and fully ready to rock and roll and play major minutes. Kentucky's actively pursuing numerous other point guards, not only in the 2024 class, but also potential reclass candidates in the 2025 class to make that jump to 24. So Boogie Fland's not at the top of that list, and a lot of people kind of said specifically if Kentucky wants him, they can get him. That's to me shows that he is not obviously at the top of that list. For Indiana, he's clearly at the top of that list, and you can see that with more specifically this past week, all 4 members of the Indiana staff going out to see him because they know how big of a priority and a need he is, not just a want. And I think that's the major difference between Indiana's pitch and Kentucky's pitch is he is a very much of a need for Indiana.
Yeah. With that, I think there's one more topic we wanted to cover before wrap this up. So Indiana basketball again starts soon. Hoosier Hysteria, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks from tomorrow. I think that's
Yep.
But
homecoming weekend.
We're recording this podcast on Thursday, October 5th. Probably will be up the 6th. But so 3 big transfers came in this offseason. You had Peyton Sparks from Ball State, the center, Kulel Ware, another center from Oregon, and then Anthony Walker, the wing from Miami. So what do you guys expectations for these 3 transfers? Kyler, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think the expectations are a little bit different with those 3. One, obviously, Khalil Ware is the top transfer that they got this season. He's going to be coming in and expected to play a very, very important role right off the bat and everything. He's going to be coming in, hitting him and Malik Renew are both going to be, kind of looked at as the guys to replace the production of Trace Jackson Davis from the past 4 years, really. So it's going to be, kind of a combination of those 2 doing it together. But Khalil is very, very unique and, very exciting in a way because you get a versatile big that Mike Woodson has been desperately wanting since he's gotten the job. Everything, Trace Jackson Davis just did not, get up to that level where he could, pick and pop. He couldn't stretch the floor out. He couldn't do anything like that, which is okay. That's Trace's game or whatever. Indiana won a lot of games through him, but Khalil Ware, high expectations for him. And then with both Anthony Walker and Peyton Sparks, I think it's kind of be, you're going to be looking at them and you see where they kind of fit in with the rotation. They're obviously going to be a part of the rotation. One, Anthony Walker, he's been in the college game for 5 years. And then 2, Peyton Sparks is just a monster when it comes to the boards. And he does a fantastic job of getting to the free throw line and he'll defend at a high level. And he's done that since high school, since I can remember watching him, way back when. But those guys are all going to play roles, I think. Khalil Ware obviously has bigger expectations than the other 2, but I think they'll make impacts, where they need to make impacts.
Yeah, well, I'll say I'm more excited to see Peyton Sparks and Anthony Walker than I am Khalil Ware, right?
Ooh.
I mean, I think what they can bring to Indiana, you get a winning mentality from Anthony Walker, a guy who will do just about anything to help a team succeed and win. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from hearing him at Media Day a couple of weeks ago. The ability to bring that in the transfer portal, not a lot of teams get. A guy who's willing to play any kind of role, a guy who made it to a Final Four, right? So I'm excited to see what he brings as a leader to this group who still is lacking some of that leadership ability, especially in the front court with a lot of new faces. Peyton Sparks, a guy who extremely, extremely versatile, athletic, not the versatility that Khalil Ware has, a guy that can obviously stretch the floor, but what he can do within about 15 feet, his aggressive, high motor ability to play around the rim, terrific rebounder like Kyler touched on, his ability to rack up fouls. And I think that's what you're going to see most, his impact and his impact in practice specifically to help with Malik Renew and that foul rate that both of them have. Peyton Sparks' ability to draw the fouls, Malik Renew's ability to rack up those fouls. And I think playing against him in practice every day is going to be a very significant impact that you probably won't see significantly on the stat sheet when it comes to Peyton Sparks' numbers. But his ability to help in practice as a very aggressive, high motor, powerful big, I think is not only going to help Malik Renew stay on the floor, but it's also going to push Khalil Ware. And that's why, Kyler, I know you were shocked when I said that, but I think that's why I'm more excited to see those 2 guys and see their impact in those ways. Because I think I think Mike Woodson himself is going to be able to get what Khalil Ware has kind of expected to be able to produce. I'm not worried about. There's been so much talk about his motor, his laziness throughout this offseason. I think there's enough fire there to build some sort of versatile kind of front court offense around. But I'm very excited to see what Peyton Sparks and Anthony Walker bring in those other aspects.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip Khalil Ware just because I think it's the obvious one. I mean, I very similar points to you. There's a reason he's being projected to be a first round pick in next year's NBA draft. He's very talented, great player. It's just the question marks about his motor, but it seems like he's a lot more committed than he was at Oregon, at least from what I'm hearing from some players, people around the team and stuff like that. With Peyton Sparks, you mentioned it, the drawing fouls, his ability, pretty much exactly what I was going to say about Renew and helping him. It's going to be, I asked Peyton Sparks about that at Media Day. He didn't really comment too much about Renew specifically, but we won't see that. But we won't see it up close. But when the games come and Renew's able to play 30, 35 minutes a game versus last year where he struggled to even play 15 minutes, that's when the fact it's going to come in when Renew's playing against these physical bigs and he's used to learning how to play without fouling. And that's just so big. And then Anthony Walker, I'm not sure what his role on the team is. I'm not sure how much he'll play, if at all. But it just seems like he's going to be such a positive presence in the locker room. Just being around the guys and seeing how they interact with him, it seems like he's really cool with a lot of these guys. Seems like he's already become really close with some of them. He kind of talked about his relationship with Xavier Johnson before he even got to Indiana. So I think there's a lot to be excited about for different reasons. I think Walker is going to be like, I don't know how he's going to impact on the floor, but I think he's going to really help the camaraderie and the chemistry with this roster.
Yep, I agree.
All right, one last topic before we wrap up the show today. Indiana basketball versus Kentucky basketball is back. After all the years, after the Watford shot, after Yogi Ferrell versus Kentucky and Jamal Murray in the tournament, this great rivalry is finally back with a 4-year series being announced, with the first matchup in Rupp Arena, the second in Lucas Oil Stadium, third back at Rupp, and then the fourth, last but not least, back at Assembly Hall. Alec, what are your thoughts on the big news?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone's kind of expected it almost for nearly the last year and a half. To finally get it though on the books, right? I think is a big win, not only for both programs, but definitely college basketball. Not having them play for so long, just in a regular season game, not including the tournament, right? I think was needed for certain years, right? As kind of that buffer happened where Indiana was in a struggling moment, obviously towards the end of Tom Crean's tenure, and then throughout Archie Miller's tenure. But the vibe, the hype, the national recognition now that Indiana has with Mike Woodson, not only them obviously making it back to the NCAA tournament in back-to-back seasons, right, getting a little bit more steam there, but now starting to have really significant high-end talent coming in every single year to kind of match what Kentucky brings in every single year. Definitely very exciting for all of college basketball, and definitely something that was needed to happen. The one question and the one comment that I know a lot of people are bringing up is obviously only one game in Bloomington. That's the last out of the 4. Who knows if John Calipari makes it to that matchup? But I think regardless, it's a win-win, right? I mean, Indiana's going to have the majority of those tickets for Lucas Oil, and I think still playing in Indy, playing at Lucas Oil, giving your team that experience as well, is a win. So all around, I think it's phenomenal to get that back on the schedule for the next couple of seasons here.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's just great for the fan base, especially the Indiana fan base has been, just every year it's all, we got to get the Kentucky series back. We got to get it back and everything. But man, when you really look at just the 2 years of what Mike Woodson's been able to do with the program, bringing that series back, getting Indiana back to the NCAA tournament, them competing in the Big Ten, for the majority, especially last year. recruiting and landing top recruits, beating Purdue 3-1 against him. I mean, man, he has done everything so far what he has said he wanted to do with this program. And you got to give all the props to him, credit where credit is due with him. But, it is exciting. You do find it a little funny that Indiana has to go to Rupp twice where they only get Assembly Hall once. I mean, I think obviously none of us were in the conversations and stuff, but I think that was just one of those Calipari things where he was never going to change his mind and stuff. And Woodson was just like, you know what? We don't care. We'll play you wherever. It does not matter. I think the Lucas Oil game is awesome. I kind of wish that was kind of like the last one in the 4-year series just to kind of cap it off, but it's going to be electric. It's going to be basically a home game from Indiana because I think they get the majority of the tickets. I think I read somewhere it was around 43,000 that they have committed to Indiana. We'll see what happens when the resale value goes and with all that stuff. But it's awesome at the end of the day. It's good to have that back. It sucks that we have to wait, 2 years for this series to ramp back up. You almost wish it would start next year. But then you have the question, is Calipari going to be there by the Assembly Hall game? You just don't know. So it's awesome. Really excited for the Indiana fan base. I think it's going to be great for college basketball in general.
I mean, I think you could ask that question about either, though. Both coaches, Woodson and Calipari, will either still be coaching for that last game at Assembly Hall. I don't want to say yes or no. I really don't know, but I'd be surprised if both coaches are still coaching the programs at that time. But it's just really good for the program. You mentioned what Woodson kind of has accomplished since he took over here at Indiana and really bringing the program back to the national prominence. Yeah, the success hasn't been what maybe he had hoped for, but it's getting there. He's trending in the right direction. And Woodson doing all the right things to bring Indiana basketball back to where it belongs in national conversation and national consideration, just period.
I think Woodson's going to be his hardest to make sure he makes it to that Assembly Hall game. I think that's going to be his goal right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would put my money on Mike Woodson making it through the end of that contract and put money on John Calipari not making it to that final game. But when you look at, one of the biggest things that, we talk about bringing Indiana back to, national prominence and everything that Mike Woodson's done, part of that is obviously getting them back into the national conversation. And that doesn't come overnight, right? One of the biggest things that he stresses and has stressed since he took over the program was playing anyone at any time, any place. And what he's now been able to do with this non-conference schedule and putting them back on the map has been significant, right? I mean, it's not just making it back to the tournament, but it's going out to play Kansas. It's setting up that series, right? And the home and home that Kansas comes back this season. It's going out to play Arizona, a very, very talented Arizona team last year in Las Vegas, right? I mean, it's setting up the Empire Classic where they're going to go back to Madison Square Garden. They're playing UConn this year. The potential to play Texas, another extremely talented team right after that if they were to win potentially. And then obviously putting this matchup back on the calendar, right? I mean, he's done a phenomenal job flipping what has been a pretty boring non-conference schedule for Indiana for the majority of these last kind of 6, 7, 8 going on almost 10 years now. And has really put significant matchups. I mean, even bringing in Harvard, playing at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, right? I mean, they're putting significant games on. And obviously the one that I forgot about there is Auburn, right? Going down to Atlanta. So, what he's been able to do, putting that schedule together, I think was step one, right? And being able to kind of bring Indiana back. Now it's about winning those games, right? They lose to Arizona, lose to Kansas last year. It's about winning these games now, and that's a significant step that they have to take to get back and solidify themselves in that national conversation. But everything that he's done so far to get them there has been exactly what he said, and it's exciting to see that. But more so, it's exciting to obviously see those matchups when the schedules come out.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of the things he's done this year, next year too. Not official, but it's been rumored Indiana's going to be a part of Battle for Atlantis, which is another huge non-conference tournament early in the season. The schedule is, I mean, it's night and day compared to when Archie Miller was the head coach, the non-conference schedule, and it just shows the commitment Woodson has put in to building the program back up, but not doing it the easy way. He wants to play the best because he knows that's the only way you can be the best. You have to beat the best, and he's done that it's been it's been one of his biggest focuses since he took over the program, and it's been for the better. With that, is there I don't really have anything else. Kyle or Alec, either of you guys got anything else before we wrap up?
Nope. Make sure you go to HoosierIllustrated.com. Well, read all of our stuff. We got tons of stuff. We're really kicking butt right now.
Yep, absolutely. We'll obviously have more to come here in the coming week and get geared back up for week 7 when Indiana goes and travels to Michigan.
Yay. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, with that, for all things Indiana athletics, follow Indiana_FRN on Twitter, Facebook, and check out HoosierIllustrated.com website. Make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and Spotify. As always, thank you for listening to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. We'll be back next week with our preview of Indiana football's matchup against Michigan and our thoughts and takeaways from Big Ten Basketball Media Day. Thanks for listening.